Hey there, guys. This is Anne Marie coming at you guys as the Anti-HR HR Lady. And I want to talk to you guys a little bit today about what to do when your manager comes to you and asks you to take on additional responsibilities. So, who am I? I am Anne Marie. I'm an HR consultant by day and an avid solo traveler all the rest of the time. And you can find me on social media also as the Bald Girl Will Travel. But in these videos here, I am going to be sharing little HR tips with you to help you better navigate as an employee. So let's talk about what you should do when your manager tries to give you a lot of extra work but doesn't mention compensation. I often have people come to me and talk to me about the fact that they have been carrying multiple additional responsibilities in a job and not been compensated for it. But then oftentimes when I ask them if they directly ask to be compensated, oftentimes they have not. They just assume that they had to say yes. And so they've been doing this and they're not being compensated. And then, of course, you become resentful. Now, oftentimes what employers will try to do is they put something in the job description where they talk about additional duties as assigned. And they use that as a catch-all to try to cover themselves in case they decide to add additional things to your job. But what you should understand is that if something falls completely outside of your job description and it requires that you even use additional skills or learn additional skills in order to carry it out, you can make the argument that they're asking you to take on an entirely different and new role, and you should ask them to make some concessions. So the bottom line is that you should ask questions. And the first thing you should ask is how long they're asking you to take the responsibilities on for, whether in their view it changes the nature of your role, and whether there is any additional compensation for taking on the additional work. You should ask this up front. Ask it verbally and then follow up in writing, right? And see what kind of response you get, right? And then you should seek to negotiate. Even if they tell you that it doesn't include additional compensation, you should ask, well, if I'm going to be doing this for more than, let's say, 6 weeks or 3 months, right? 2 months, right? I would like to talk about additional compensation after that period, because then it's actually becoming more of a permanent responsibility, right? And you should also evaluate whether or not this is going to require that you work any additional hours, have to stay late in the evenings, work on the weekends in order to get it again, press for more compensation if that is the case, right? And then you should decline. You should also ask, am I able to decline this, or are you telling me I have to do it? These are questions you should ask. Don't make assumptions. Ask the questions. Don't worry about whether this means you won't be a team player or all these kinds of things. You have to look out for yourself at work. And so if you're being asked to do more work, you have every right to expect that you're going to get something in return, specifically compensation. If it's temporary, you also want to ask that they provide you with something in writing that indicates that the responsibilities, it outlines the responsibilities, and it indicates for how long you're going to be doing it so that you don't get something dumped on you indefinitely. You can also ask if they want you to carry this out for an extended period that goes beyond 90 days, ask that they update your job description and reevaluate the grade and the salary range to ensure that you're not supposed to get additional compensation. All of these things will indicate that you have at least educated yourself some about what should be due to you for taking on more work at a job. But what you need to understand is that if you don't ask for things, you will not get it in the workplace. People will just give you more and more things to do. And if you take them on and then you do them well, they're just going to give you more. Doing more work does not necessarily mean a promotion. It does not necessarily mean compensation. It does not necessarily mean any of those things, especially when you're a person of color and especially when you're Black. And that goes double if you're a Black woman, because unfortunately, they often look at us and treat us like what Zora Neale Hurston called the mules of the universe. So if you don't want to be treated like a mule, don't act like one. So if you are approached and asked to do extra work, the responsibility is yours to immediately ask some questions and then Be willing to push back and say, I don't think that I have the bandwidth to take this on if I'm not going to be compensated. Or you can also ask, what are you going to take off my plate in my current job to make room for me to do this extra work that you're asking me to do? Because there's only supposed to be 8 hours in a workday. So you should not be signing up to take on extra work without extra pay and then be working extra hours. But in order for that not to happen, you have to push back in the very beginning against all of those things by asking the right questions and asking for more money if that is what you think you deserve. But don't take it on and then be sitting there unhappy because they're not going to offer to pay you more if you don't ask. The other thing I would add is check your employee handbook to see if there is anything in there relevant to supplemental pay. Some employers have supplemental pay policies where, for example, if an employee, for example, goes out on parental leave and another employee is asked to take on their responsibilities, that employee receives extra pay while they're carrying out those responsibilities. Then when the person comes back, the pay goes away. They go back to doing their own job. Some companies have that, some do not. But again, if you don't read and you don't ask questions, they're not necessarily going to tell you. So as I often say, reading is fundamental and it's your responsibility. Know what's in your employee handbook. An educated employee is one of the most dangerous things for an employer. Be a dangerous employee. Read that handbook that they gave you, know what it's in. Know what's in there. So if they're violating their own policies, you can make them follow them. So ask about how long they're going to expect you to do the work. Ask them whether or not you will receive pay if it extends a certain initial period. Usually they might ask you to do something for 6 weeks, or they may ask you to do something for 90 days, right? But if it extends that period, you should be asking for more money. If it is a job that is very much different from the job that you're doing, you should ask for an updated job description and a review of whether the grade should be increased or changed and compensation changed to take into consideration the fact that you're taking on a whole new set of duties. But again, if you don't do these things, they are not going to do it for you. So it's your responsibility to ask the right questions, to inquire. And then I'll tell you, if they are expecting you, if you have an employer or a manager that's expecting you to take on a lot of extra work for an unspecified amount of time without any compensation and they refuse to pay you, you need to start looking for a new job. Don't wait till you get fed up and you're angry and you're pissed off. Start looking for a job then and there, because then people don't care nothing about you. A good employer and a good manager is going to look out for you. And if you ask, especially if you point out, there's a discrepancy here, you asked me to do all this extra work and no one said anything about compensation. Can we talk about what compensation I will receive either going forward or for the period of time I'm doing this work? If they don't at least try to help get that money for you, you need to start looking for a new job. Don't just stay there and become anybody's long-term workhorse mule. Start looking for a new job right then and there. If you believe that they're violating their policies and not doing what you're asking them to do, or that they're taking advantage of you because of your status, you should probably reach out to me and we should have a talk about what other things that you can do. But what I want to make sure that all of you understand in this conversation is that seeking and asking for additional compensation when you are asked to take on new work is your responsibility as an employer, as an employee. Don't think that your manager is going to do that for you, because if they can get away with giving you extra work to do and not paying you, they will. Don't be that person. Don't wait for them to look out for you. You look out for yourself. I hope you found this tip helpful. If you are dealing with discrimination at work, if you're dealing with a hostile work or toxic work environment and you're not sure what to do, I'm the AntiHR HR Lady and I'm here to help. Please reach out to me, book a discovery call so we can talk about it and I can help you figure out a way out. HR is not your enemy, but they're definitely not your friend. I am. See you in the next video.